Good evening and welcome to the High Performance Show with me, Kamir Arjun, where we showcase ordinary South Africans under 30 living extraordinary lives. Today's special guest is Olivia Bernstein, a woman whose drive, discipline, and focus has led her down an impressive life of accomplishment. Olivia has represented South Africa at the Commonwealth Games for chess. She has been a two times cum laude graduate at Stellenbosch University. She has been the vice chairwoman of the Stellenbosch University International Study Society. At the same time, she worked as an HR manager at Tutor Elite, an organization providing high-end private tutoring services to students in Stellenbosch. She also served as the secretary of Stellenbosch University's chess committee, as well as being the chairperson of the second year and the vice chairperson of the first year women's residence committees in her Minerva residence during her varsity stay. She has also won the Allen and Overy Roman Law Moot Court Challenge in that team. And besides all these fantastic accomplishments, Olivia seems to excel at anything else she puts her mind to, such as being awarded one of the top performing actresses during her school productions, to being an all-rounder from achieving science awards, achieving honors and being an all-rounder as recognized by her high school, as well as captaining sport during her school time. Currently, Olivia works as a candidate legal practitioner at ENS Africa, where she continues her pursuit of becoming an attorney. Olivia, your CV is so impressive. I am so glad to have you on our show. Thank you for your time. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kamir. And thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you, Olivia. It's amazing. And, just reading this and looking at all the things you've achieved, it seems like you've just built such an awesome momentum of achievement. Please tell us, where did this ultra high performance lifestyle begin?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, you know, I think I've always been just really interested in pushing myself and in just excelling in the areas that I'm interested in. So I guess from a very young age, I mean, I've been playing chess competitively since I was about 9. So, and before that I was doing, I mean, I've been doing drama, I Stedfords, and singing, I Stedfords, and piano exams and those kinds of things since I was about 6. So I think from a very young age, I've been involved in doing things competitively and doing things with a goal in mind. And so I think that kind of set the platform for me for the rest of my life, that whenever I do things, I like to do them with a goal in mind, for the most part.
So you'd say you were very much a goal-driven person. And was that sort of taught to you by your parents, or did you sort of figure that out along your way on your own? Just so we have some understanding of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when you're 6, I don't think you say, I want to do, and I stayed fit, because I don't think you know what that is. So definitely my parents played a huge role by giving me the opportunities to partake in Stedfords and exams and all of the things that I was able to at such a young age. And I think they definitely set the pace for me going forward, which I'm very grateful for. But I also just think that I think it's just part of my personality, to be honest, that um, I struggle to do things halfway. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it to reach a certain goal. So I do think it's a combination of my parents and also my personality, I guess.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, because almost every single high performer I've interviewed or I've had the privilege of working with in my life, they all have that same attitude of, that doggedness of wanting to either do something to the best of their ability or finishing it 100%, whether it be in studies. For example, I mean, my personality, I've done an honors degree, but I'm working on a master's, and then I want to do a PhD just for
Yeah.
completion. Not so much that I want to get into academia, but it's because, you start the journey, you may as well finish strong. And
Yeah.
and like one of our other guests, Taylor, she's one of the marketing directors at the Western Cape Rugby. She spoke about how everything she does, she wants to give it her 100%. It's almost as if she's a perfectionist, but she just knows that it will bug her if she just was half-hearted at it,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I guess from my perspective, it's kind of like a, I can do it, or I can try and do it. So why not try and do it? So I mean, like for example, in my third year, so my final year of my BA law degree, then how the degree is structured is that you continuously drop subjects until you get to your one major at the end of the year, in your last semester. But I was like, what? Like I've come this far. I've done 2.5 years of a subject. Why drop it now? Not to just do that last semester. So then I ended up double majoring in economics and or triple, I guess, in economics, psychology, and law. But yeah, I guess that does stem from the part of me that was like, I've done 2.5 years. I may as well just finish it, do the 3.
yes,
So yeah, I can resonate with that completely.
and that's such a profound thing that you mentioned, that you said it's that self-belief, that self-confidence, and that level of self-assuredness that you have to back yourself to do these challenges. Because, when you look at what you've accomplished, some of them have been pretty daunting feats for someone who has to look as an observer. And that mindset that you said of, you back yourself, um, and you sort of keep building on that. Did you ever at any point feel intimidated by your goals, or how did you handle, constantly upping the ante? Because that's a part of the goal setting process, constantly challenging yourself. So how did you mentally deal with, the increased stakes, the increased pressure, and just keep on pushing yourself?
Mm. It's interesting that you say that, I back myself, because looking back, it's easy. Like when you see everything on the paper and like you hear the lists of everything, like it sounds pretty cool. But in the moment when you are like about to play that chess tournament or about to start that game or about to go on stage, I don't back myself at all. I'm constantly full of with doubt. And I mean, I did end up cumming both my degrees. But I mean, the number of times during both my final years, so in my third year and my fifth year, which were the respective final years of my BA and LLB degrees, I did not think I was going to cum my degree. I didn't necessarily believe it at all. Like I wanted to, and I put my mind to it and I worked, but I mean, I didn't back myself. I was, yeah. So it's interesting that you say that. But to answer your question, the pressures, it's different depending on what I was doing. So with drama and with all of the shows that I did and performances and exams and stuff like that, somehow with that, I didn't feel as intimidated or as scared. And that for me was a huge passion, and I really looked forward to it because I was so passionate about it. Chess, I was very passionate about as well. But because that's a lot more competitive and you are playing someone else, the pressure with that was immense. And I struggled with that a lot. And that's actually why I ultimately gave it up, because the pressure got too much for me. Because it got to a point that I I had a title. I still have a title, Women's Candidate Master. I'd played at the Commonwealth Games. I'd represented South Africa. And it was almost like I would go into every game feeling that pressure and not so much the enjoyment anymore of can't lose this because everyone's expecting me to win. So if I lose it, that's going to be horrible, And I literally felt like sick to my stomach about it, which I don't think is healthy. So I did actually end up giving chess because I was struggling with that pressure, giving up chess because I was struggling with that pressure. So that's really interesting. But I also learned from that how to deal with pressure better, which I think stood me in good stead with my degree, because my degree was, I felt, to be quite a high pressure degree. Laws, I mean, every degree is pressure in its own way. But for me, law is very, very studying intensive. And so I felt a lot of pressure to cram a lot of information in my brain in a very short amount of time. And then I felt pressure in the exam to get that information then onto the paper because I'd spent so much time putting it in my brain.
Right.
But I dealt with that pressure by basically just thinking of what's the worst that can happen here, and basically just alleviating myself of that pressure. So I had a goal and I really wanted to get there, but the consequences of not getting there is not it's not the end of the world. The world's not going to fall apart if I didn't get a distinction for that particular exam. And it also wasn't going to make or break my whole degree, and it didn't make me who I was. And that took a lot of self-talk to get to that point, but that's ultimately how I dealt with the pressure, because it was 5 very intense and pressure-filled years for me. But yeah, like I said, I think from the chess, so I stopped playing chess at the end of grade 11, because I really just wanted to focus on academics in matric and just not have that pressure. But yeah, I think what I learned from that, and I took from that, is that if I'd lost a game, so what? I stopped doing something I loved because I was scared of the pressure, which is silly. And yeah, so I took that, I learned that from that, and I took that through in my degree with me. And I think it stood me in good stead in the long run.
And it's brilliant because you've sort of, spoken about 3 wonderful pieces of wisdom there. You spoke about your passion, you spoke about handling the pressure, and also just, keeping your mind sharp in that. And I just, I resonate with it on such a deep level because everyone or anyone who's passionate, and we've seen this time and time again, whatever they're passionate with or passionate about, they just naturally seem to excel at because it doesn't feel pressurized. It doesn't feel like you're
Mhm.
working hard for something. It's that curiosity that takes hold of you. That everything you want to do is because you're so hungry to learn. So sort of the barriers and the pressure sort of falls away because it's your passion driving you, and then as a consequence of that, you achieve this excellence, and it's that personal mastery of whatever subject it is. And 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 another thing you mentioned there with the whole with the chess and the studies, you sort of logically processed the pressure, and it's something that I like to call like a reference point. I always tell myself, if there's a task that's daunting, I could say, you know what, I've done X, Y, and Z. If I can overcome that, then surely I can achieve this.
Mm.
And and and, and you told yourself that this pressure isn't the end of the world, and you had a bigger view of it, which is brilliant. Because I find that a lot of the time, especially in life, whether it be at work deadlines or with varsity, people would let the perceived pressure or deadline freak them out. Then all common sense and logic goes out the window, and then it's just panic and stress, and then
I'm
you,
just
you
laughing because you're basically describing my undergraduate experience. It took a while to learn to manage the pressure.
no, but you know what? You got it right eventually. I mean, these double cum laude speak for themselves, right? You know, you got there eventually.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, no, I did, and it really it proved itself to me last year because I wrote my board exams last year. I decided because I know with accounting you have to write all 4 in one go, but I'm doing my law articles, and there's 4 exams, but you can pick how and when you want to write them. But I just elected to write them all in one go because I thought let's just get them over with. Um, and something that I wish, like I said, I wish I'd learned while I was playing chess that I only really truly started to believe towards the end of my postgrad degree, and that last year I was able to embody, which is what you kind of said it already, but which is basically just I can only do the best that I can do. I can't do better than I can do, obviously. I mean, that goes
yeah.
without saying. But I think it takes a lot to just really internalize that. And I think once you do, it's quite freeing because it just takes off that pressure, because just enjoy it and just do the best that you can do. You can't do better than that. And if your best is winning the Rector's Award, then that's great. But if that's not your best, then that's you can't do better than that. So that was something that was massive, I think, for me to learn. And I really wish that I'd learned it earlier on. I think it would have helped because naturally I'm a very stressed person, and I take on a lot. And so the stress builds up, and that little motto really, really helps, I found.
And it's something that our viewers can definitely learn from and implement into their own lives personally, because I think a lot of people take on a lot more stress and put a lot of burden on their shoulders, and bear stress that's out of their control, for one. So they stress about things they can't control, and they focus on things they
Mm.
can't control. And if you can take the focus from there and say, you know what, focus on everything within my control, within my power, and give it the best that I can, then at least I can manage expectations. Because one of our other guests, Dr. Maraj, he was also talking about how in life we have this shifting goalpost mindset where we achieve something and then we want to chase the next big thing. But if we don't make it and we fail, then that also has a negative it has a negative consequence psychologically. It hurts self-esteem and self-confidence. But in terms of processing that and rationalizing it, because everything that's made you so successful is, you've obviously had your fair share of challenge and defeat and hard knocks. But it's how you picked yourself up and got going, and how you motivated yourself again instead of being knocked down and saying, you know what, life was tough, the circumstance was bad, maybe this isn't for me, and then walking away. You said, no, hang on. You did an assessment and you sort of figured it out and said, okay, did I do the best I can? Was there something I could work on? And then you took that forward and you continued chasing something. And that is something that I've noticed all high performers do, where they constantly try and take one step forward, even if it's slow, but they focus on the marginal gain of being better than they were yesterday. And by focusing on doing their best in the moment, in the circumstances, they ultimately propel themselves into the direction where they need to be at. And it's so great that you said that. um, with how you deal with that, because I think the more people learn to sort of not beat themselves up about things they can't control, but
Mm.
focus on their own performance and focusing on managing their game. I think they can also be happier as a result. Especially
Absolutely. Absolutely.
like even in like a corporate context, if people are competing for a job or something else, and one gets it and the other doesn't, then instead of being happy that they progressed and then one got another job, there's a bit of resentment, or again, like I said, just feeling sorry for themselves. So
Mm.
it's a good mindset. It's like the winning mindset that you've got, where you're able to turn your failures into life lessons and learning and move forward. So that sort of brings me to my next question of, how do you sort of work your mental game now to still, you know, keep chasing your ambitions based on all this knowledge you've acquired? Because, you said you reached the point where you were stressed out and now you've rationalized it. Do you feel now that you've got more control of that mental aspect? And how does your life sort of feel now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, as I said, I actually ended up giving up chess because it felt like too much
Mm,
pressure for me. And I've really grown so much since then and learned how to handle that kind of stuff. And now, I work as a tax lawyer at one of the largest firms in Africa, which is like Stress City, right? That's like the
yeah.
capital of stress country. But I've really felt that the the self work that I put in during my varsity years, and learning how to manage my stress and how to deal with the pressure has really paid off now. And I'm really grateful for that, because I do see my peers, honestly, they are so stressed, they are so overworked, they are struggling. And
Yes.
I'm lucky that I'm not in that position. And I guess the mindset that I have is, again, it's really, I can only do the best that I can do. So I will do something to the best of my ability. And I'm not going to go and hand in a piece of work or something that I don't feel is my best. I'll always give of my best, but I can't give more than my best. So once I'm satisfied with something, I'm not going to sit there for another 2 or 3 hours and continuously try and read it again and read it again, because that's a waste of time. You can rather
Exactly.
move on and do something else, either do another piece of work or do something that's not work or something like that. But I've definitely seen in my professional life how learning to have that mentality is paying off, which is fantastic.
And that's such a brilliant point that you've spoken about, because we are professionals in a high performance environment where you're working with other high performers. So
Mm.
at ENS Africa, you are at the center, like you said, in the largest law firm on the continent. So it's already a high performance environment because of that. And then you're in a place where you've got other like-minded people, extremely high performance in this environment. And now you're trying to operate on that level. It brings out another level of high performance, because you're sort of all sort of fighting in the same place. And then you find the best of the best of the best. And and then the other people who can't handle with the demand, and I see it as well in the finance side of life, and which is very prevalent topic nowadays, is the mental health issues, burnout, anxiety, stress, heart attacks,
Yeah.
things like that. Because with this changing environment, in the past 3 years, we've had COVID, we've had lockdown, we've had all this change up to business. um, Corporate has seen an increase in workload because of this remote working, and there's been a boundary that's sort of been crossed in terms of working hours, personal hours, and a lot of professionals are suffering from that. So we've spoken about your mind game, and now I'd like to focus on your routine in this environment, because you're doing very well. I mean, the fact that you're on this show means you're really excelling in your life, and seem to thrive at the edge of chaos. So, what are you doing in your daily routine that has helped you stay fit, strong, and healthy and sharp to continue to give off your 100% in an environment that demands the absolute best of yourself?
One thing that I'm religious about, and it's a non-negotiable for me, is exercise. At least 4 times a week. I try to go every day. It's not always possible, because that for me, yeah, that's just so important. I mean, I sit all day at my desk, and most corporate jobs, that's what you do, right? So I just think it's so important to move your body. Otherwise, 2 reasons. Firstly, otherwise, if I don't get to go to gym or to exercise or something, I start feeling like a slave to my job.
Right.
And I feel like they have control over my life, and that's a horrible feeling. You want to feel like you're doing what you're doing because you want to be doing it, not because you have to be. And so making time and ensuring time to go and exercise, for me, it's like my personal time. It's the time I get to just think and just not be doing work or whatever. So that's the first part, why that's so important to me. And then secondly, we're sitting all day. It's so important to move from a health perspective. And it stops me from feeling sluggish and lethargic. So that's really, really important. I'd say another really important aspect of my life is that I always have 8 hours of sleep. Um, okay, let's backtrack. Always is a very strong word, but let's rather say I always strive to have 8 hours of sleep,
Right.
and I usually do. I usually do. By 9, 9:30, 10 at the latest, I've turned my laptop off, because I'll do it in the morning. I'll get it done in the morning, and I'll meet the deadline because I have to, and I'll make it work. But I have to prioritize sleep, because if you don't prioritize sleep, well, at least for me, then I can't give up my best, and the work's anyway going to take me longer if I'm tired, and it's not going to be good work. So sleep and exercise for me is hugely important. Um, Having said that, though, there are obviously exceptions. And to be a good employee and to also be good at what I do, I have to also understand that sometimes you have to skip exercise because there's an urgent deadline and you have to meet it, and it's important. Or you're not, if you get your 8 hours of sleep, you're not going to get through all the work, and then that's a problem. But as those are exceptions. As a
Right.
rule, I try and get that stuff done, and I think I've been pretty good at sticking to it. Because if you let work play or mess with those two specific things, I think then you're in dangerous territory, because then I think you are at risk of work starting to run your life versus work being a beautiful part of your life. And I think that's how you can keep it sustainable. Um, at least,
Exactly.
yeah. And another thing
Exactly.
that I find really important is including social aspects. So on the weekends, even, I mean, this doesn't happen that often because it is difficult with time and stuff, but even during the week, if you can. But I always try and include 1 or 2 social things during the week, because again, if I don't, then I feel like work is controlling my life, which I don't want it to do. And I'm very passionate about what I do. I absolutely love work. So I don't mind working at all. And I have no problem working, the long hours that my job requires me to do. But I do have to set personal boundaries. And those are just the 3 kinds of things that I try and do to make sure that I am, setting those boundaries.
And it's such a wonderful way that you worded it. You call it your non-negotiables. It's something that I swear by as well. For me, and it's like you said, it's very prevalent that people have work run their lives now because of this. I think lack of boundaries, and it's very prevalent in corporate now that they
Mm.
don't people don't sleep well, people don't eat well, people don't exercise, and then, we sort of, the corporate person sort of functions like a robot, trying to push as much work in the 24 hours as possible, to an extent now where the returns are actually quite diminishing.
Yeah.
And the body suffers, the mind suffers, work suffers, and then there's just a huge resentment in the environment. And the fact that you mentioned, you have to get your sleep in, and you made it the norm and not the exception. Granted, you have those busy times and seasons, 100%, where something has to give, and you have to put in maybe a few days off overtime to get things done. But the fact
Yeah.
that you've got that structure, that's brilliant. I also live by the 8 hours of sleep rule. I make sure I train, I make sure I eat well. For me, I keep the principle quite fluid in saying that I need to keep my mind, body, and soul sharp. Keep it
Mm.
aligned with my passion and purpose in life. And then once I sort of have that in the trajectory, then I can unify. Because I always say that if I master myself, self mastery, and project that energy outward, it's more powerful than not knowing who I am, what I stand for, or unifying my mind, body, soul towards my purpose.
Yeah.
Um, and we see it in corporate a lot, especially in some corporate positions where there's a lot of financial benefit. You see people who make a lot of money, and they're suffering from poor health. They're suffering from poor financial lifestyle choices. So they've got the financial benefit, but is their body, and are they really happy and healthy?
Mm.
And I think once people, especially now in the 21st, oh well, I think since the beginning of time, people have always associated success with financial gain. But as wisdom, as conventional wisdom always say, your health is your number one wealth first, and then everything material that flows from that is a bonus. you
Yeah.
know and
Absolutely. I mean, so when I started, when I started my job at the beginning of last year, then I met all of the executives and directors in my department, and I kind of had one-on-ones with them, which was really great. And what the one director said to me really stuck with me throughout my journey. And he said, you have to actually make this sustainable if you want to do it for the rest of your life, because if it's not sustainable, you're not going to do it for the rest of your life. And I thought
exactly,
that was really, really interesting, and that was really true, because if you want to keep yourself doing what you're doing forever, you have to make it sustainable. If it's not sustainable, you're not going to do it. And so that's what I've tried to do, as you say, is to just keep it sustainable, keep myself healthy, so that I enjoy it. Because otherwise, you're going to start resenting it, and then you're not going to want to do it anymore, and that sucks, So
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And I mean, and the sustainability and of looking after yourself is sort of, it's a lifestyle for the rest of your life. And that's a common theme that I've seen with you and all your achievements. It wasn't just a few years of high intensity and then fizzled out. It was sustained effort since childhood, and it sort of just matured as you've grown as well. And that's like high performance for you. It's a lifestyle, it's a way of life. It's not just a season of 2 years of intense performance, and then Olivia is now out of the game. You sort of grown and grown, and just taken it to new and new heights. And I think that's something that we can all learn from. And obviously with that, I think this is a traditional question I ask every single one of the people on the show, because it's just a good summary of everything. When you look back on your life, if you had to summarize the biggest three life lessons that you've learned, what would it be, so that our viewers can gain some of your wisdom?
it's tough. Okay, well, I think three is tough. I think the first one's pretty obvious from everything that I said. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned that's been instrumental in how I'm able to handle my job and handle my life and everything today is I can only do the best that I can do, right?
Right, right.
And it took me a long time to really learn that. So yeah, I mean, if someone has that, people have been saying that to me my whole life, and it's I never really embodied it until a couple years ago. So that's definitely number one. Um, sure, you want another two?
Another two. Shame you've got so much wisdom, Olivia. Surely you can find something for us there.
Look, I mean, I think the second one is that nothing's going to come to you without hard work. I mean, I think if you look at anybody excelling at what they're doing, there's years of hard work that stands behind that. So I think if you really want something, you really need to put your mind to it and go for it. Because probably it's achievable most of the time if you put in the work. So I just think that's huge. I mean, I can't think of any achievement of mine where there wasn't a huge amount of hard work behind that. I don't think anything just, so I think that's probably the second biggest lesson. And I think the third is probably that you need to enjoy what you're doing as well. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, like this is so cliche, but you really do only have one life. So why spend doing something that you don't want to be doing? Yeah, there you go.
It's so simply and well said. Honestly, I really appreciate that, because it's a common theme that every single person on this show or every single high performer swears by. They've aligned their passions and their purpose with their vision of themselves. They have unified their mind, body, soul, so they take care of themselves, and then they project that forward into every ambition of theirs. They're not afraid of hard work. They back themselves, and like you said, they understand the essence of life. You've got one shot at it. Every single day is a new day of opportunity, but every single day that passes also is one less in our life. And they all get that this life is precious, it's beautiful, and you have to make the most of it. You've got to be in positions or do things that make your soul come alive. Sure, we have to get through some really rigorous periods in training, like you said, as an aspiring attorney, or in anyone who's doing an articles, or to get into a profession. But once that's done, or even in that process, you've got to see the positives, you've got to see the opportunities. you know I think there's a lot of negativity about with people's mindset in life, and they see the negative, but it's something that's, everyone can take a leaf out of your book from, or a page out of your book, is that you've seen the opportunity in things, you're doing what you love, even if the work is difficult. It's all about reframing that mindset to saying, you know what, at least I'm going to learn something new, something I didn't know yesterday, and then I welcome that challenge. And it's so refreshing to see, Olivia. It's honestly so refreshing to see, and to hear your story on this show.
Thank you.
you
Well,
know
thank you for having me. I
no, I
really
appreciate
appreciate
it.
it. It's been so great chatting to you.
It's been an absolute privilege, and I want to thank you for your time. And obviously, I'd like to thank all our viewers for tuning into our show. We will post Olivia's a professional, like, LinkedIn contacts in the description below, so that you can follow her journey or network with her if you have been inspired. We also would like you to please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, so that you can continue to be motivated by our other high performers. Until next time, cheers.